Welcome once again to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we're your co hosts with 88 years of experience working in Colorado sports. Myself with the Denver Broncos, Dave with the CU Buffaloes, and we both did time with the AAA Denver Bears, along with several other side experiences.
This week, we continue our reveal of the 150 significant moments, including ranking the top 50 in state of Colorado sports history as we head into the state's 150th birthday this August 1st. That's the date Colorado was admitted to the Union as a 30-state state in 1876. A select committee of 10 veterans with almost 300 combined years of covering or working in sports in the state of Colorado are selecting the moments that we will count down at the rate of 5 per week and then daily for the final 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered numbers 121 through 150 in our last 4 podcasts. So this week, we are revealing numbers 116 to 120. As we count down, all are being archived on the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with all our podcasts. Go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, and then top 150 moments or podcasts.
But first, we revisit other moments of Colorado sports history that aren't in our top 150 in and around the date that we do our podcast. Over 1,950 have been identified, all chronologically signifying their importance at the time. We are remembering moments that had a significant impact on the state sports scene. For example,
on February 16th, 1992, the longest free throws made streak, 74, in NAIA, RMAC, and Colorado collegiate history came to an end when Adams State's Mike Hall missed a technical attempt that ended in the first half in the Indians' 60-59 win at Mesa State. It set the new state collegiate record by 1. The previous NAIA record had been 57 that Hall set the season before.
Now, also on February 16th, except in 1956, the Denver Pioneers technically scored to date the most goals in a game by a collegiate hockey team from the state in a 21-1 pounding of British Columbia in an exhibition contest at DU Arena. 13 Pioneers scored goals, with Captain Jack Smith netting 4 and 5 others scoring twice. Denver took 83 shots and leading 6-0 after the first period and 12-1 after 2.
Dave, that's a heck of a lot of goals and a heck of a lot of shots.
One every 3 minutes.
On February 16th, 2019, a little more recent, over 1,000 people, including family, former coaches, and players, media, and fans, turned out at the First Bank Center in Broomfield to celebrate the life of Herb Brown, a Denver North and University of Northern Colorado graduate, CU baseball coach, basketball official, and radio talk show host, among others. It was the largest celebration of a member of the media in state history. Speakers came from all over the country to eulogize him.
And a kudos to Chuck Morris of AEG Live, who got us the First Bank Center for free to run that event for Irv and his family. It was a great memorable moment with the speakers who were terrific, if you recall. Now, on February 20th, 2005, the Pepsi Center in Denver hosted the NBA All-Star Game, with the East All-Stars defeating the West team 125-115. Allen Iverson of the Philadelphia 76ers was the game's MVP, scoring 15 points with 10 assists, 5 steals, and 4 rebounds. The shame thing about that is no Nuggets were selected as All-Stars for that game in Denver. Well, throwing a bone to American Top 40 host Casey Kasem, and now on with the countdown. And that brings us to February 7th.
In Colorado sports history, number 120.
That brings us to February 17th, 2001. In what many called the biggest prep wrestling upset in state history, Wasson's Brett Roller defeated Pomona's Tom Klum 13-12 in Colorado 5A 125-pound state wrestling championship before over 17,000 in attendance at Pepsi Center. At the time, Klum was an undefeated 3-time state champion with a 148-0 record and was seeking to become the first ever 4-time state champion in Colorado history. Roller earned 5 points in the final seconds, 2 for a takedown, 3 for back points to win the match. He finished the season with a 39-1 mark.
Number 119.
The 1911 Denver Grizzlies of the Class A Western League were voted one of the top 100 minor league teams of all time in 2001. They were number 22 on the list. The team finished with a 111, 54, and 3 record. Games were much quicker. No radio or TV in those days, no lights. Denver won a game 6-0 at Topeka that was played in 1 hour and 15 minutes. It had a 13-inning game played in 2 minutes, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Games were called because of darkness or if one of the both teams, needed to catch a train to the next location. A pitcher on that team was named Ed Kinsella. No idea if his name was utilized in 1989's Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner played Ray Kinsella, who had a dysfunctional relationship with his major league father, John Kinsella.
Number 118.
On November 30th, 1899, the first meeting in the series that would eventually be named the Border War, as Colorado Agricultural College, now Colorado State, and the University of Wyoming met for the first time. It was the first game CSU ever played outside of the state, and it won 12-0 by forfeit after a controversial ending with the officials, which were provided by both schools. They have played 117 times, with CSU leading 60-52 with 5 ties. The two will be in different conferences for the first time in over a century beginning this fall, but the schools have agreed to keep the series alive. It's the opener for both on September 5th in Fort Collins.
Number 117.
Until Gerald H. and Alan R. Phipps purchased undisputed control of the Denver Broncos for $1.5 million on February 14th, 1965, to increase their ownership of the team to 94% by gaining 52% with the immediate cash payment, the voting trust headed by spokesman and team president Calvin Coons were seriously flirting with selling the team to the Atlanta-based Cox Broadcasting Company. I can remember being a teenage boy and every day getting the newspaper. There was no talk radio. This is how you found out things from the newspaper. Coons and the trust had an offer of slightly over $4 million from them to purchase all the stock until the Phipps brothers and their firm Empire Sports Incorporated took full control of the franchise and saving pro football in Denver. They purchased the Denver Bears the same day. Interestingly, Jerry was here and was part of the meeting. Alan was out of the country, like in Australia or something. And they joked because it was the same thing when they sold the team to Edgar F. Kaiser. Alan said, every time I'm out of the country, you buy or you sell the team. So anyway, that's what happened.
I would say that's a very significant moment when you're looking back. They didn't step forward to save the team. Are the Broncos here?
No, Jerry Phipps said, "Gentlemen, excuse me." He went across the street to a bank, took out a loan for $1 million, came back and said, "Can I buy you all out?" And they said yes. And that was the team. It was Valentine's Day, basically, when he called the guys in Atlanta and said, "We're not selling you the team, so happy Valentine's Day." That led to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, by the way.
Sure.
Number 116.
On October 6th, 1990, not exactly the greatest moment, but certainly a memorable one since it has occurred only 3 times in the history of college football. CU's 33-31 win at Missouri made major headlines. Trailing 31-27, the Buffs had a first and goal at the Missouri 3. Here's Larry Zimmer's call of what then transpired.
It is a first down. And there is Johnson taking the snap and spiking the ball to get the clock stopped. And it stops with 28 seconds. Johnson gives it to Bieniemy. Bieniemy goes to the 1. Second down and goal to go. Now there are 18 seconds left. Colorado has it at the Missouri 1-yard line. Johnson has them in the power formation. Give it to Bieniemy over the top. He didn't make it. The clock is running down to 10 seconds. They got to get him unstacked. The officials, though, are going to give Colorado time to unstack him. It's third down. Here's the play. This could be the last of the game. Johnson spikes it with 2 seconds to go to give him fourth down. This is the last play of the game. Bieniemy with Hemingway. Here it is, fourth down. Johnson dives to the goal line. Did he or didn't he? Touchdown, or did he not score? We've not received anything from the officials.
One of the officials raised his arm on the right side of the field, Larry. He's swarmed under.
This is a terrible scene. Missouri fans have swarmed onto the field. If you saw it, I didn't see it. Now they've announced that it is a touchdown for Colorado as Johnson slams into the end zone on the final play. Missouri fans came racing out onto the field, and one official apparently had thrown his hands in the air. There was an official on the goal line on this side who just stood there with his hands at his side. But Kent saw one official throw his arms in the air and indicate touchdown. And they've announced it on the PA system, and they put it on the board. There's some question as to whether it was a fifth down. At any rate, it'll go in the record book as a 33-31 Colorado victory, and we'll have a lot to talk about on this one, my friends.
That's for sure.
Well, I was right there in the booth, and they edited out my F-bomb because when CJ spiked the ball in fourth down, I yelled the F-bomb, and Larry gave me the death look, and I'm like, going, that was fourth down. And he's like shaking his head, no, look at the scoreboard. It still said third down, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then after the game, Jerry DiNardo, our offensive coordinator, was in the coach's booth next door, came around the corner and said, Dave, how many plays did we run there? And I go, I think we ran 5. He just shook his head, oh, no, and walked out of the booth. But what happened is that the chain crew never moved the down marker from second to third. Missouri's OmniTurf was also in terrible condition. The correct shoe was needed to avoid slipping. MU never informed CU of that fact, and the coaches documented 92 slips and falls by Buff players, 16 of which were documented and shown on ESPN's Game Day the next Saturday. Thanks to Buff graduate Chris Fowler, by the way. But the fifth down obviously was the biggest controversy. So at this time, we want to welcome in CU's quarterback that day, subbing for an injured Darian Hagan and future Orange Bowl MVP Charles Johnson. Welcome, CJ.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's great to be with you guys today.
Now, you had never heard that before from Larry, had you?
No, it's funny. I've only heard the TV copy with Dave Logan and Les Shapiro. I've never heard the radio copy of that.
Well, before we delve into the finish, the Missouri game was your first career start, and then you had one other the next week against Iowa State. When did you know that you were starting?
Hagan had gotten hurt. He had gotten banged up pretty bad in the previous game against Washington, where I ended that game. And so I had an idea that I would, if not start, would play a lot in that game, as I had practiced pretty much the whole week leading up to Missouri. So I had a good indication that I'd end up starting.
You had solid stats, 10 of 18, 151 yards, a touchdown, which was a 70-yard bomb to Mike Pritchard. You had 9 rushes for 17 yards, but you were sacked just once for 2 yards. Did the turf conditions affect your ground game? And I think I know the answer to this one.
Yeah, Jim, it had a major effect on our ground game. I think the enemy ended up the game with somewhere close to 220 yards. I think I don't know what the single game rushing record is in college football, but if you go back and you add the yards that he didn't get because he ended up slipping in wide open field, he'd rushed for well over 300 yards, I believe, in that game. And for myself, I couldn't stay upright. You couldn't really cut on the field. And if you go back, if you watch, and people say, well, Missouri played on the same field and it impacted them as well. John Bowman catches a pass at the end of the game where if he doesn't slip, he walks in for the touchdown. We're not having this conversation because that was the play that started the 5-down scenario. The defensive back for Missouri, who was the only defender in the area, slipped as well. It was amazing because both of them just sort of turned and looked like they looked at each other and just slipped. And so the field was horrible, and it definitely impacted both teams.
Of course, Missouri had the right shoe, and we didn't. I remember Bill Crowder scurrying around trying to figure out what to do to get us shoes with longer cleats, but that wasn't going to happen when you're on the road.
Well, we needed blades. We didn't need shoes. I mean, it was like playing on ice.
I do remember Gary Barnett being a little frustrated with you, so he put Hagan in for a series in the second half, but he too fell victim to the turf, and you went back in. What discussions took place during that brief time, if any?
Yeah, and look, football. It's often said, and I believe it to be true, that football does mimic life. And you talk about a lifetime of emotion in that game, as you mentioned, Dave. First start, you want to show well. We're a heavy favorite to beat Missouri. The game is nip and tuck. Coach indicates to me, or he lets me know at halftime, that Hagan would start the second half. It was heartbreaking to me on for a number of different reasons. One, I knew physically Hagan had not practiced and really wasn't physically capable of playing. He had that shoulder strapped down pretty tight. So it felt horrible for that. And I also felt like, man, I may have let my team down by not stepping up and leading us to victory the way that Hagan certainly would have. And I remember at halftime, it was Hagan goes in. I'm somewhat despondent. Jeff Madden, who was our strength and conditioning coach at the time, he comes to me, noticed I'm kind of hanging my head a little bit, and he recites a poem to me, gentlemen. And I remember just sort of snapping out of my malaise or whatever, out of my being despondent. And because he said, he was like, CJ, Hagan's not physically capable of finishing this game for us. You're going to have to go back in, but you got to keep your wits about you. And that was just enough of a pep talk to get my head back where it needed to be, guys.
That's fantastic.
I didn't know
Okay,
that.
let's visit that final series. You spiked the ball. Now it's second down. Coach McCartney called timeout after Eric Bieniemy's first run. There was an interesting conversation between you, Mac, Gary, and Senator Jay Lewinberg. Recall that for us.
Well, a couple of things happened. As I was listening to Zimmer's call of that last series, remember, guys, it was the officials had stopped the clock. Bieniemy gets stopped at the goal line. He tried to jump over top. He gets stopped at the 1 yard line, and the clock was counting down. And Missouri was sort of taking their time, of course, because they wanted the clock to expire. But during that timeout, I'll never forget, Coach McCartney grabbed the ref, pulled the ref to him and said, hey, there's 18 seconds on the clock. We're going to run these plays, these 3 plays. Do not allow Missouri to delay the game or run the clock off by just laying around. And the ref said, I got you, coach. I'll never forget that. And when you think back on that series of downs, when the official stopped the clock, that was the difference, because by the time I spiked it, there were only 2 seconds left. If the official don't stop the clock, time runs out and the rest is history. We lose that game. But Mac planted in that official's head, Missouri's going to try and lay around and run the clock out. Don't allow them to do it. So that was one big highlight of that timeout. The other was the series of plays that we're going to run. We worked on this series of plays called Geronimo. It was a 3-play series where it's you kill the clock, you hand it to Bieniemy. Oh no, you hand it to Bieniemy. If we don't score, you kill the clock, and then we'll run the option play. Well, Jay Lewinberg, once I got back in the huddle, I said, guys, Geronimo, it's second down. We're going to run these plays. We're going to give it to Bieniemy, spike, and then we'll run, our option play. Well, Jay tried to tell me, CJ, we can't do that. Like, we've already run 2 plays. It's third down. We can't run 3 plays. And as he was beginning to explain that, an official said, bring him out, CJ, like, bring him out. And I'll never forget, my quote to Jay was, shut the hell up, Jay. It's Geronimo. I had no idea what he was trying to tell me until after the game, because he had realized that we had run 2 plays. We didn't have 3 plays to run, but the down marker had indicated something different. And what I heard, in terms of our strategy, was this 3-play series of downs. So it didn't compute to me what Jay was trying to say until after the game.
Meanwhile, I'm in the KOA booth. I'm keeping a running play-by-play. So on first down of the 3, you spike it. And I wrote down Speedy because that was our quote or our name for the spike. Remember?
That's right.
So
That's right.
I called Speedy, and then EV plus 2, and then the timeout. And then after we were being sorted out later, I was like going, well, did the first spike not count? Maybe because the chains weren't set? Because I felt
Right.
like an idiot thinking that I was wrong somewhere.
No, that's right. And here's the funny thing about it: if you guys go back and look at that, you know, the old grainy film. That's how long it's been. Like the film is a little grainy, and it was. I think it was the first year in college football, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, where you could actually kill the clock. You could spike it. Um, I, I,
That's right.
and it was. You look at them today; they're so smooth with it. They take the ball. They don't. You know, I took the ball and like reared back like I was throwing a 70-yard pass and spiked the ball. And it was that point that sort of stood out to me because I'm like, my goodness, man, that was so ugly. Yeah, but it's not something that had been around for years and that we practiced a lot. But you're right, that speedy. And I thought exactly like you afterwards. I thought, well, maybe they didn't count that first play in which we clocked it because they hadn't set, you know, the officials hadn't set the game clock yet. But you know, maybe that had something to do with it, maybe not. The irony of all of this, gentlemen, is I still think after all the examination of this and after all the discussion and all these years, there's still sort of subtle details. Like the one that I just mentioned and you mentioned, Dave, about whether or not they actually counted that first play, that is still a bit of a gray area for me because I can't explain exactly how they missed the hold down.
And then there
CJ,
was a distraction in the stands. A fan had a heart attack right about that
oh, it's
same
crazy,
area.
crazy.
So it was totally crazy. So, well,
Well, the
then
sports will kill you.
oh, okay, you then scored on what was fifth down. Many think you didn't, but when you see a video clip from the end zone, I thought it confirmed that you did because in the side angle, it looks like you're trying to score between a bunch of guys, but there was actually a decent hole for you to go through, and you're on your back holding the ball over the goal line, correct?
Right. That's exactly right. That was my memory. I remember, and by the way, I could have made that could have been a lot easier. I made it as difficult as that play could be. I cut it up early because I didn't want to take any chances on something happening as I run down the line of scrimmage. But had I stayed on path, I'd have walked into the end zone. But to your point, I hit, you know, I was hit right around inside the 1 yard line, and I kind of spun around, which gave me just enough, you know, space to inch into the end zone, and I purposely held the ball up towards my head because I knew that part of my body was across the goal line. So in my mind, I didn't think there was much of a doubt. But to this day, guys, as you all know, it's still part of the whole controversy, right?
Oh yeah. Uh, CJ, how crazy was it post game? When did you find out it was a fifth down?
Jim, it was crazy. We're in the locker room, and by the time we had gotten into the locker room, because there was still some commotion on the field, I think there was a debate of whether or not we had to run a play that would be the extra point. If I recall, we kind of came back onto the field to do that. But by the time we had gotten into the locker room and settled in, there had been a lot of conversation about whether or not there was a fifth down. And the first I heard of it was a reporter who actually said, CJ, there's talk that that you guys scored on a fifth down. And my initial reaction was that's crap, right? Like, no, no way. But before I committed to that, I said, you know, let me give it some thought. I'll take a shower, and I don't think there was five downs, but I'll give it some thought. And I came back out. And I'll never forget saying, no, I just ran the series back through my head, and I'm certain that it was four downs that we scored on what was the fourth down. Jim, it wasn't until we got back to Boulder. I'm watching Sports Center where it
Wow.
was confirmed to me that it was five downs. You know, it was the Sports Center kind of led with, you would never guess what happened in Columbia, Missouri. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I told these folks that I was certain that it was four downs. And as clear as day, it was five downs. So that's how I learned officially that we had scored on the fifth down.
That's amazing, amazing. What was it like for you during the following week between those two starts?
It was chaotic. Here we are, and think about here's the crazy part of it for me personally. But here we are. The season had to that point had been so crazy. We had great expectations, obviously, for us coming into that 90 season, having played for the national championship and having been undefeated the year before losing to Notre Dame. We started the season in the top 4 or 5. I think we're maybe three. We're in the top five for certain, and we tied Tennessee in the Pigskin Classic. We beat, I think it was Stanford,
Stanford.
yeah, on Bieniemy scores on the last play touchdown. And then we go to Illinois, where we were at favorite to win, and we end up losing the game after being ahead at halftime. So we're 1-1-1. The following week against Texas, we're down by 2 or 3 scores in that game. We amazing comeback to win that game. Then Washington, it took a Deion Figures interception in the end zone to secure victory for us in what I think was a 17-14 game, but a very close game. And then the fifth down. And so every game that season had just been a nail biter. And here we are, my second start against Iowa State is upcoming, and there was no conversation about Iowa State or the prep for it or the focus on that game. Everything was about what took place in Missouri, and quite frankly, all that had taken place leading up to Missouri, given how crazy that season had started for us. So for me, it was like, man, I get my first home start, and no one's talking about the upcoming game because of what took place.
Amazing.
It's funny. We didn't drop in the polls after the Missouri game because word hadn't spread to the voters yet. We actually dropped after the Iowa State game that we won.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because back then, no internet, no email. I mean, people were dependent on sports, and a lot of the voters just see the final score and vote. But going back to the fifth down play and that whole thing, that's the reason when they trotted us back out to try the extra point. That's the reason the NCAA stopped having, if you score at the end of the game, you don't have to try the PAT, which at the Maricopa, Michigan, we recall we didn't do that. But the thought that day was that, okay, we have to go out. First of all, Missouri fans thought that, okay, they know it's a fifth down. Missouri's going to have one snap at the ball at the 2-yard line. Not going to happen. The theory was, well, let's say Colorado somehow screws up, Missouri recovers and runs down the field and scores a defensive 2-pointer, tie the game. So that all led to the NCAA Rules Committee saying, hey, if you score in the last play, you don't need to try the PAT. So little trivia there for y'all.
Dave, didn't something like that happen the following year with CU? If I recall, was it Beekert? Someone returned in order to tie the game. We ended up tying the game on what I thought
that was Greg Beekert. It was Nebraska. It was the game that was like 8-degree wind chill, and Jeff Brenner blocked the extra point. Beekert lumbered 85 yards to score the defensive 2. But we weren't trailing at that point. That gave us our 19th point, and Nebraska missed Greg Thomas blocked 2 field goals that game to save the game for the tie.
That's right. That's what it was. It wasn't a game-ending play.
No. Of course, we go back to Missouri 2 years later and win 6-0. That was a pretty nasty crowd that night, wasn't it? It was a Thursday night game, too.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever forgiven us for that.
And they've gotten even so many times. There was a game in '97 where they wiped out a Marcus Washington touchdown, or a fumble return for a touchdown, because they said we had 12 men on the field. Well, it was the 11th guy running off, not the 12th guy. So, and they tagged us for that. Then there was a basketball game, and even Norm Stewart said that the foul call on Colorado was BS, and it gave Missouri 2 free throws at the buzzer to beat us in a basketball game. So I've always said Missouri's more than made up for what they thought they were cheated out of. So finally, CJ, what are you doing these days?
I just recently retired from Ball Corporation. As you know, Dave, I had been there. Ball, Fortune 500 company based right here in Broomfield, Colorado. Great company, one of the world's largest manufacturer of aluminum packaging. And so I had been at Ball for several years, serving as an executive there, and retired a couple of years ago. And so now I'm consulting in the space, doing a lot of corporate personnel continuity consulting, doing some radio, hanging out with guys like Jim and Dave, 2 legends in your own rights. By the way, guys, I don't know what's wrong with the folks over there at the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame, but the fact that the 2 of you aren't in it is a head scratcher for many. I just wanted to throw that out there, unsolicited. But that's what I'm doing. Kids are grown and gone, and so just as an empty nester, just living life. Myself and Lisa, and just trying to live it out gracefully, guys.
That's a classy thing to say.
Things. And by the way, we're still looking for a sponsor. So if you have any ties at Ball, they want to sponsor our podcast, give them a little shout for us.
It makes sense. Look, and no one, especially you, Dave, I can't speak for Jim. I think Jim has a very healthy crop of hair, but for you, ball, we can put a DY at the end of that, and it'd be a great sponsorship.
I lost my hair when I was 22, so it's the money you save on haircuts. I always say I showered on my women.
There you go. And by the way, Jim, I just a side note here. I bought my first vehicle after graduating from college back in, I think it was around 2000, maybe around 97. Your nephew was my salesman.
But there are more Saccomanos around than a person might think, and a couple of nephews of mine have done very well in the auto sales business, and thanks for supporting them.
Absolutely, man. The least I could do. But guys, I really enjoy this, and kudos to the work that you all do with the sports, the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame. Dear friend of mine, great Colorado Buff, is being inducted this year, and got a call from him, and he invited me to be a guest at his table, speaking of Cordell Stewart. And so looking forward to that, and I'm certain I'll see you, gentlemen.
Wonderful.
Great. And I suspect we're going to have you back on when we talk about the national championship game, and that'll be certainly in the top 10 state sports memory list.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, guys. You set me up nice with the depressing conversation about a sports moment. Now let's end it, and hopefully we can have that conversation about a much more fun sports moment.
That's right.
But it was memorable. Yeah, you have to say that.
Indeed.
Great. Thanks again, CJ.
All right, fellas. Enjoy the week now.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, everyone, we hope you are continuing to enjoy our podcast. Keep spreading the word. Thanks always to our two sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder, 10th and Pearl, just west of the Pearl Street Mall. And Jay informed me that my namesake items back on the menu, Plati's Sunday Brajals. So he's trying to figure out what kind of steak to use for those. But if you've never had a Brajal, that's Italy.
Oh, man.
As Jim will attest, two Italians eating Brajals. And then the Colorado Collegiate Chronicle, published by Tim Simmons, who's our executive sports producer, another veteran PR man who does a great job providing an in-depth look at college sports around the state. And thanks to Mark Johnson for introducing each one of our numbered list.
That's a wrap on our 16th podcast. And fortunately, I did not drool on anything again after you commented about the Brazils. Tune in next week for the next reveal of the state's top 150 moments. We hope you're enjoying our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips down memory lane in the state's sports history. A reminder, the Hall offers tours of its museum, as well as the Power Field at Mile High Stadium, and the class of 2026 will be inducted April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver.